All right, everyone, welcome. It is I, the Dumble whose door is always open. Gandalf without the gray or the white, because I'm all black. Jordy LaForge captaining this enterprise. The People's Podcaster with new merch. I am Left Eye E.G.O. and we're kicking it today with the man who keeps it cooler than a polar bear's toenails, who believes in that justice at all costs. We've got the man, Justin Ice. How are you doing today, sir? Yeah. We're
I got
merched
this
up
from
over
Left Eye
here.
Ego merch.
We're
Just
merched
nice.
up, guys.
I'm
Yes.
keeping it chill. Got this training
Yes.
because you want that martial arts in your life. You want that self defense. What's happening, everybody? Just nice
Guys,
here.
if you guys are in the Philadelphia, Delaware, or Southern Jersey area, please, if you need some self defense, the man that trained me up, okay? The man that took me from a guy that wanted to know how to do a Jefferson squat to damn near competing in MMA cage fighting. Yes, it got that serious at one point. You need to check out Justin Nice, Godfist Martial Arts, guys. It'll change your life. All right.
It is.
So we're actually going to be having kind of a broad but kind of nuanced conversation on conservatives. I know that there have been a lot of conservatives that have been in the news for kind of the wrong reasons lately, and it's been kind of giving credence to some of the things that we've seen liberals or libertarians accuse them of, even if it isn't going to be as intellectually sound or eloquent as someone might expect, but it may not be that they're completely wrong. And so someone that helps me intellectualize my thoughts when I go on rants and I ramble, because editing makes me look a lot better than I am at this. Just Nice is here to help give us some nuance. So, what was the thing that you were talking to me about earlier in terms of just the things that people say but may not be able to intellectualize?
Well, I generally say when, because people say, oh, they're, when people say claim things like, that seem sound rather inflammatory that can be argued against, like the feminists against the patriarchy, but is there patriarchy? Rape culture, but is there rape culture? Um, I know amongst our people, it's like the man, racism. And then you've got opponents saying, but is it racism? Is there the man anymore? Is it even the 1960s? Is this the time of the civil rights and so forth? And I generally say, I kind of, well, I study a lot of philosophy and different things. And one of the things I picked up in my studies of the Far East is that there are two sides to every story. Kind of says like the dualism of Taoism is kind of like saying everybody's right and everybody's wrong at the exact same time, which kind of says to me, well, there probably is a something,
Mhm.
and it's there. It's like having it's that itch under your skin kind of feeling. You just can't scratch it, but it's something there, but you just can't get at it. You know what I mean? And so
Yes.
you say it's an itch, or you give it a term, you give it something easy to describe. Oftentimes motivated by emotions of frustration and difficulty. Um, and we kind of just say, hey, I think it's this, right? When it may be a more nuanced situation. So I'm going to say that if somebody feels like there is something present, it's worth examining. Well, is there something there?
Right.
Is there an enemy?
Right.
Is there the man? You know what I
Hmm.
mean? What does
Yeah.
it look like? I think spirit in terms of Judeo-Christian, and even I would even say beyond Judeo-Christian, most ancient religions and spiritual practices, even the more polytheistic ones, they have Christianity has devil or the adversary, right? I
Right.
believe devil means adversary, right?
Hmm.
You have Loki in
Hmm.
Norse, the
Yeah.
trickster, the
Mythology.
trouble,
Yeah.
but he's the trickster and the troublemaker. You have these kinds of characters throughout human history, and that is people have recognized that there is what can be considered an antagonistic force, and they really don't know how to intellectualize it. We were initially discussing the sinking feeling. It's not even so much sinking feeling, or the image of the racist, the angry racist on the right.
Hmm.
because for most of this extreme leftism, the right has been sort of taking a stance of, oh, we're not racist.
Right.
And now
And
the
nothing's
racism's gone in
wrong.
reverse. And now you're racing. Now there's racism against white folks. You
Yeah.
know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um, Good. Yeah.
No, I was gonna say. I mean, I know that the way that it might seem that it's hard to intellectualize certain things is when I was single ego, and you would tell me things that I would not notice about the women that I was pursuing or the woman that wound up coming after me. And so at
Mm-hmm.
first, everything seemed like it was a flood of emotions that it made me feel, and I couldn't really intellectualize, what was going on. But as I would pay attention, it would take a long time. You remember the one you already know the one that I'm thinking about. It took
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know.
months.
I know what you're talking.
It took months for me to figure out what you were trying to tell me, and then I caught it. And then the thing was is that as I caught it and retained it, I was like, oh, I know that these characteristics aren't what I want in someone that pursues me because I know that they're only after me as a placeholder for somebody else, or because I lend a certain credence to something that helps them out but does nothing for me. And so the thing is, as I went further and further in just dating in general, the more and more sensitive you get to the things that are your triggers to a set to say that's a nope for me. And the thing is that unless you intellectualize that with someone else, it's like, why don't you like people with red hair? No, it's not. It's not that. It's just it's the way that, and you're trying to say, well, no, it's a set of behaviors that go along with their demeanor, their attitudes, and the way they might go about a certain something that lends itself to saying, I've seen this behavior before, and this is
Mm-hmm.
typically assigned with this person, and it doesn't do me any good. So I shouldn't be in your presence at all. And to the other person, it's like, well, I can intellectualize someone that would understand it, but at the beginning, it was hard to explain that when I couldn't explain it myself. I just knew what I was being told, and I was trying to implement that. And so, from what I'm seeing, is that for some people that are liberal or libertarian or another group that isn't conservative, they're seeing and hearing certain things that are letting them say, well, hey, these people, there are a lot of people that a long time ago did not like anyone that didn't look like them. All right. Sometimes they wore hoods and sometimes they didn't. However, they were they're saying the same things, and what you're saying is kind of on that level as well in terms of either a perceived hitting meaning behind it or the
Mm-hmm.
fact that you're shrouding yourself in conservatism, or just say, hey, here's my black friend to prove that I don't think this way. We don't all think this way, but it's a conservative thing. It's not just this a white thing or a Chinese thing or a Mexican thing. It's a conservative thing, and for liberals and libertarians to see that, say, well, no, that just because you bring someone on to make you say what you said doesn't make what you said at the beginning right. And
Mm-hmm.
to actually kind of accentuate that point, I'm for everyone else. What's happened more recently is with Scott Adams, the guy creator of Dilbert, um, basically was looking at a Rasmussen poll that dropped, and basically went on to say, based on that, white people get away from black people. And so the thing is, I actually went back and looked at the Rasmussen report that the Rasmussen poll that they put out, and I thought it was flawed. They say you're supposed to have in statistics at least 100 people for a good sample size. They had 1,000. That wasn't my
Mm-hmm.
problem. My problem was the fact that they had white, black, Hispanic, and maybe other as the racial breakdown of the people they asked. They didn't tell us the numerical breakdown of the races that they brought in. And so I said, well, hey, this could be 50 black people that you asked. And so if you ask 50 black people, the data is going to look incredibly skewed. And so for me, it's like, well, at this point, I don't know what the demographics are, but to see this man say, well, hey, I saw 18% of black people said it's not okay to be white. Another 8% said that it is extremely not okay to be white, which means it's 26%. And another 20% said they weren't sure. And so I said, well, hey, he took that to mean, well, that means that 18 plus 8 plus 20 is 46, which means only over half the people that they asked of his question to don't believe it's okay to be black. And so, because of that, wife, you're white, get the hell away from black people. I've supported black people and it's gotten me nothing. So, you should just get away from them if you can. A- And so,
Mm.
in watching that, I looked at the poll and said, the poll is flawed to me because I don't know how many of each ethnic group you got. If I can assume 250, 250, 250, 250, well,
Mm-hmm.
then does that mean that the black people you interviewed are saying that they're African American? Are they Afro Caribbean? Are they Nigerian?
Mm-hmm.
What are they just black? Like you ask people that say I have no racial existence to an extent outside of the United States, unless they did a genealogy test. And
Mm-hmm.
so I said, well, the poll is kind of flawed to me, but I wondered what made Scott Adams so comfortable in saying white people get the hell away from black people.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was very irritating for me to see guys like Brandon Tatum actually jump him and say, but was he wrong though? It's like,
Yeah.
yes, he was wrong. You're supposed to call out things that aren't supposed to be right. If things aren't, if what you say can't be said if you flip the races, then you saying it doesn't help either. I was like,
Yeah.
I thought you were supposed to be, if you're claiming that Christian values are conservative, even though I say there are people that have liberal values that are still Christian. So you can't make Christianity a liberal conservative thing because there are people on both sides that still believe in God. So if you're
Right.
telling me that you're putting Christianity into your conservatism, but yet you're saying you shouldn't live next to black people, where's the Christ-like attitude in what you just said? Like
Right.
Christ said he came to both Jew and Gentiles when the Jews absolutely hated the Gentiles and called them unclean. So Jesus was saying, like, hey, I've come here to bring together, not divide apart. So what Brandon Tatum's saying is actually being divisive. And so the
Yeah.
thing is, I lived like 30 minutes outside of Dallas. When he was talking about being in stop six, I know where that is. My mother taught in South Dallas, the same place that he said is dangerous. I get it and I understand it. However, you're also not considering the fact that, are we saying trailer parks too? Like, are 8 Mile and
Mm.
stop six supposed to be all that different if we're not counting just straight up population density? If
Mm-hmm.
8 Mile was just as population dense as stop six or South Dallas, they would probably have the same problems, which
And that's
means
you
that,
referencing, and when you talk about 8 Mile and things like that, you're
yeah,
referencing hoods that are majority Caucasian, where
right,
where it's dangerous. There's I think he mentioned somebody mentioned trash on the street, like Don Lemon, that's what it was.
right,
Trash on the streets and everything else, and it's like, well, if you go to a hood that is majority Caucasian, you're gonna find trash in the streets, drugs, and violence. You're gonna
right,
find that at any low income hood
right.
where people are kind of crammed together, poorly educated, and things of that nature, and that it's not a race thing, it's a class thing.
Right. And that's the thing, is that he was trying to say, oh well, what Scott Adams says wasn't right, wasn't wrong. I mean, I can't. I had to move out of a black neighborhood too, and I said, well, see, this is the problem: is the fact that to whom is listening to that, it makes you seem like you are Uncle Ruckus.
Hmm.
Everyone would try to get on you saying, oh well, your wife is white, and that's why you think that way. Well, my wife is white. I don't think that way, but I don't let who I marry determine kind of my points of view. Even if Shiro and I weren't together, my views would still be my own. And I would actually try to intellectualize them from a conversation of, I always say, let's talk about it because I'm okay with talking about it, not
Hmm.
defending someone who makes blatantly racist statements. And so for Brandon Tatum to then say, oh, well, Scott Adams was absolutely right. I had to get away from the hood and now my life's better. Well, you saying the hood, I mean, well, it could also be trailer park too. You had, like you said, you had to get away from a certain class of people to be where you are. But to just say hood only, and then to say about, oh well, all these
Well,
celebrities
to
live.
say hood and be referencing because the comment is get away from black people,
Right,
and to say that you in his reference to hood is a reference to living around black people,
right.
which isn't it's not a conversation about class,
No,
education, or social structures,
no.
because even if someone were to say, well, the majority are black, it's like, well, yeah, majority of the black population struggles with poverty. The
Right,
majority of black population struggles with um, they struggle with poverty. They struggle with poor education. They struggle with urban environments. So yeah,
right.
they are overtly represented in violent crime and criminality. But if you put all those social factors over a race of people that are not black, they would have the same
Same
issues with
problems. Yeah.
criminality. You know, I mean, I grew up in Baltimore, majority black city. There wasn't trash in my grandparents' neighborhood, and there was just one white family on their street.
Exactly. And
Um,
yeah,
but I live in a slightly more Caucasian, lower income area, and there's trash everywhere.
yeah. I will say this, guys, as an aside. When I first moved back to Philly, I stayed with Justin Ice for about 2.5, 3 months, and so I wound up, because I packed everything into my car and the house was full up with things that they had. I kind of left most of my stuff in my car. Right around the after the first week, I got a knock on the door saying, "Hey, look, someone's been looking into your car. You need to get your things out before it's stolen." Right? White lady, her name was Cookie. Okay, I've never met a white cookie before, and so while I'm getting my stuff out, white Cookie's like, "You in the hood now, baby?" I'm like, "Wow, I have."
Yeah,
That's a
the
first.
godmother of the neighborhood, or bit, you know.
Yes,
But a white woman yelling at a black dude, "You in the
you in the
hood,
hood,
brother? You in the
right?
hood, baby? You need to learn."
Right.
That's
Um, right. Yeah.
despite the point is, and I understand the point is, you can't say don't live around black people.
Right.
Look how bad it is. This is, I mean, and we're definitely directing this towards Brandon Tatum's
Yes.
response to the statement.
Yeah. And I will,
Um,
and we'll get
when a
and
black
I'll get
dude
to Scott
experiences it in
Adams.
reverse, you know,
Right.
huh?
It's yeah, and we'll get to Scott Adams too on it, because I was like, I'm taking it kind of inside out, I guess, to an extent, because of the way that he was explaining it. Even in his explanation, he's saying, "Oh, well, these athletes and these celebrities don't live in majority black areas," but then again, he goes on to discredit all of Atlanta. How many millions of black people are in Atlanta, number one, and how affluent some of the black people that live in Atlanta are. So
Mm,
you're automatically discrediting the successful black people that would live in what even rappers in the 2000s were calling the new Motown. So for art,
hmm
for entertainment, for showmanship, for people that, want to be in the southern mecca of the United States, it works. And so he's
hmm
going to immediately discredits them, and he's also discrediting, what's the city in Michigan where the affluent black people are as
I
well?
believe it's called Southfield,
Southfield, Michigan, and I believe
the suburb of Detroit.
right, the suburb of Detroit, and Ellicott City, Maryland, where I've been near your aunt's place, and it's beautiful, and it's a majority black neighborhood, but beautiful houses all around. We're talking 3 stories, which is hard to do on the East Coast. I mean, a finished basement with like almost a film or theater room. You're talking some money on the East Coast, right? And so for
Hmm
him to automatically just discredit all these cities that at, are black, or even we're going back to Black Tulsa that were majority black, where there was affluence,
Black Wall Street.
was
Yeah.
yeah, Black Wall Street was very disingenuous to me. And I said, you know what? Looking back on it, the way that Amazing Lucas criticized you was warranted. In Lucas's mind, he's right to say you're Uncle Ruckus, and that you're going around saying, thank the Lord I got away from the Negroes. Oh, God, that pearly, pearly white skin they got. Oh, I can just feel it on my black ass face. Oh, my
Granddad, is that
Lord.
Uncle Ruckus?
Shut that black bastard up, for I call child services. You know, that's how Brandon Tatum sounds to someone that might be liberal or libertarian based on your defense of what Scott Adams was saying. Just
Side
as
note: I was watching some Boondock clips earlier. Just side note. There you go.
okay. Thank you, sir. Thank you. It's hilarious. I love
That was
Boondocks was
really
right on a
good.
lot of things. Thank you. And
That was good.
so, it's for liberals and libertarians that are hearing what you say. It's like, well, I thought you were on the side of calling things out that are wrong, that aren't Christ-like, and that don't unify but divide us. And here I see you doing that same thing with Scott Adams. And for what Scott Adams says, I don't I don't really agree with canceling people or businesses. However, I could understand how if I were friends with Scott Adams and he said that, and I have black friends, I'm coming around the corner. I'm knocking on your door like, hey, bro, we're good. I don't know what he's on, but I'm not about that at all. We're friends, and through our friendship, I've learned that some of the misconceptions I may have had about people that don't look like me aren't exactly true. And I value our friendship enough to call out someone that's being racist with what they said and leave it at
Hmm.
that. I could understand even friends of him or white people or even the business that he would work for having to come out and say that because like whoa, we're not going to co-sign segregation because that's what that is. When black people
Hmm.
were saying we're talking about white flight, and white people are like, no, we just moved to different areas. When you wanted to go urban, we were in the suburbs, and just so happened that jobs were moving back to the city when you were moving to the suburbs, so we moved back to the city. You would
Yeah,
make them seem correct in saying we would call that white flight.
and
And
it's also an
so,
invitation. It's an invitation because with him being a black man wanting to move away from black people, it's also an invitation for the situation where yeah, that call it's a tale of tale as old as time. No, not really old as time, but the story of the walking in the wrong neighborhood and the neighbors call the police because they don't recognize you, and the only thing they don't recognize is the color of your skin. um that's what that invites. That invites that kind of,
right,
well, move away from black people. Then when that affluent black individual, I met a gentleman who in his 60s was perusing his new neighborhood, a millionaire, and folks called the police on him because he was walking around, an old man. You know, this is something we're supposed to be growing away from. So a statement as clean and clear cut can't be taken out of context. The move away from, but get the as he said, the F word, get away from black people, white people. That's my advice to you because they're a hate group. It's like, well,
right,
that's just, and we're kind of entering into the realm of the, just to talk to the comment and not just Tatum, and
hmm
others, because what was that movie, the documentary Uncle Tom, where you
right,
had the black conservatives coming out and they're like, oh, they're just calling us Uncle Tom because we know the truth and everything else, and it's like, let's give it time. Let's give it time because the extreme behavior of the left, the extreme behavior of the left created created what I would call strange bedfellows, and that means a lot of people didn't like what was going on the left. A lot of people thought it was kind of totally ludicrous. You know what I mean?
okay, all right,
If you're born with a penis, you're a man, baby. You know what I mean? If you're
exactly
born
right,
with a vagina, you're a woman.
exactly
Everything else is what it is. You know what I mean?
right,
We're really trying to, not trying to embrace lifestyles. You're really trying to really unmake reality. You know,
hmm
um, I found a social media page, and it's not even an issue in terms of life. It's not even a conversation of homosexual versus heterosexual because there are homosexuals that are against this kind of perversion of reality.
behavior, yeah,
The race conversations did get out of control, and
okay,
they got really, really insane, very, very ridiculous.
hmm
um, and the left was just really off the rails. We're just going to say it. They were off the rails. We were locked inside through a pandemic.
hmm
There were unnecessary riots and violence. They called some. They were calling everybody a white supremacist, so you could be a black white supremacist, which made no sense at all. What they said that Virginia politician, the black woman, was a white supremacist. Um,
The veteran, good lord, yeah,
I found
yeah,
there were other non-march, there were other racial groups that are doing financially and infrastructurally significantly better than all the groups, including white, talking about feeling the feeling the pressures of racism and segregation. And they got ridiculous. They
yeah.
got absolutely ridiculous. And I was earlier today, after we talked earlier, I was thinking about what was the victory that caused the left to really lose steam and put the conservatives in a place to really kind of flex, right?
Okay.
And what I think happened, stop me if I'm wrong, I think it was the combination of, I think Roe v. Wade, the turning over of Roe v. Wade,
Okay.
was kind of like a big victory for the conservative side, and it may have knocked a lot of the wind out of the left.
Mhm. I mean, I could.
Um,
It could be that. Yeah. Go ahead. Keep going.
um, I think a lot of the information about the pandemic and Fauci
I
and
think
those
that was
conversations, I
the
think
thing
that
that they
helped
needed.
too.
Yeah.
And that was just like it put a lot of moderate. I mean, this whole existence with the extreme left, we're pushing the moderate liberals over to the right, and plenty
Hmm.
of them have said they switched because of all the insanity.
Yeah.
I don't think you really switch your viewpoint. I really appreciate someone like John McWhorter who maintained his stance as a Democrat and a liberal and a progressive who doesn't agree with extremism or the insanity.
Right.
And he got interviewed and approached and shown a lot of love by the conservative movement, by the
Hmm.
Republicans and so forth, because of what he was saying. But he was not he wasn't switching sides. He wasn't changing parties.
No.
He was staying right
Right.
where he was.
Hmm.
He believed what he believed, and they were still considered liberal concepts in terms of politics. He
Hmm.
didn't. He still, he recognized a lot of the social issues, but he wasn't extreme, right?
Yeah.
And it was sort of after that you kind of was like, all right, now it's time to see the strange bedfellows that people created during this
On the
during
conservative side. Yeah.
and watching them basically turn on each other because they're not
No.
really on the same side. They just had
Right.
the same enemy.
Right.
And once the enemy's defeated, then it's like, so what are you really about?
Right.
Right?
Right.
Some conservatives legitimately are against racism.
Hmm.
They are about less government. You know,
Yeah.
they think certain things are horrid, and they support freedom of speech, and everything else.
Right.
So they are reasonable. They just have different views on how the government should operate. They can have conversations with Democrats and liberal thinking people and work towards consensus
Yeah.
using facts and information.
Right.
And then I think what they all found out is that they were hanging out with actual racists.
Yeah. Yeah.
The racists everybody said are on the right
Show
got a
themselves.
voice. They got a
Yep.
chance to have a voice.
Yep.
They would have never been popular, and they probably weren't really popular until this massive divide,
Right.
if you think about it. They
Yeah.
were always floating around, but they couldn't really get any traction. These are the
Yeah.
guys that were like, we got to find out if Obama is actually an American because he might
Right.
just be a Muslim foreigner.
Cause yeah, isn't his middle name Osama?
Yeah, don't we have to look up his birth certificate? It's
Oh
like,
no, it's Hussein, right? If it's Hussein,
when
I mean, come on, guys. Obviously, we know he's not American.
it's
I do. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
what yeah, I laughed at it. What inspires? I'm not saying he was the greatest president since sliced bread, and he definitely wasn't Jesus, the way people were touting him. But when did we suddenly get inspired that it was perfectly reasonable to try to figure out this man's birth certificate?
Right, and that's why I said now the same people that were saying I want Obama's birth certificate are the same people bitching about the fact that when COVID hit and people are going around with vaccine passports, they're like, "Your papers, please." You know how racist that sounds. You sound like those people that were in Germany in the 40s. So do you asking for Obama's papers, like
Hmm.
do you not see how what you're saying is directly going against what you're saying? And if we don't, and I think honestly, to the for the most part, I think it was 2020. I thought people that might have been moderate or flat out racist didn't have a voice, but maybe were saying that we're on some broken clock stuff.
Hmm.
Hey, I was right on COVID, and I was right with, hey, you know what? I don't know if the election was falsified or not. I do believe there's some things we should look into. Okay. And they're like, you know what? That's the 12 o'clock and 12 a.m. and 12 p.m. I need. Come on in. Say whatever you
Hmm.
want to say because we know you're on your side. Conservatives don't do a great job at vetting people. And so the
I
thing
think.
is, they'll take in anyone that agrees with what they're saying, not knowing if what they're saying is a cover for something that might be a little bit more deep seated. And once they get a big enough platform and someone pulls the curtain back, Emperor's got no clothes. You know,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
and so the thing that you would say about liberals is they will make you know that you know that you know and will grill the hell out of you to prove that you're liberal, and then you might get in, but that's only assuming that you're on the ground level of whatever they've got. Like, hey, we reserve the top level for these types of people, and you need to work your way up. Even though we grilled you to make sure you're a liberal, at least they vet. And
Yeah,
conservatives
they do.
did not
They
do
do vet
right.
for their extremists. You know what I
Yes,
mean? They want to make sure that you're using manic panic when you colored your hair,
right. Yeah, and
and not
so
and
you
not
go ahead.
and not L'Oreal, because come on
Mm-mm.
now.
That's oppressive.
We
L'Oreal's
shop at
oppressive.
Hot Topic.
Damn. And so I think what happened is we're seeing what 2020 brought to roost. A lot of us that were saying, "Hey, I don't think it's a good idea to take something experimental," and you know what, I'm not quite sure if the person that you put in office is the best guy for the job, but I'm willing to discuss that. We're seeing what this is what almost what year two and a half, almost year three of the people that were brought in at 2020 with those talking points getting exposed for the rest of the what their thoughts and beliefs are being completely antithetical to conservatism.
Hmm. I would. I'm. A, we can. That's good. Let's. Like. This is the. Let's talk Steven Crowder, for example,
Yes.
who turned on one of the top conservative media groups, the
Outlets.
Daily Wire.
Yes.
He like that whole thing was insane with him
Right.
and the Daily Wire.
Right. I will.
And
I will
there were
just
others.
But
Good.
I'll say just to preface, I will say that what we're talking about, if you hadn't heard, was I don't know if you guys know who Stephen Crowder is, popular, conservative media personality, Daily Wire, huge conservative media outlet as well. So Stephen Crowder actually was not going to renew his contract with the Blaze, and so he was looking for a partner to have his Louder with Crowder show. So unbeknownst to the rest of us, Daily Wire sent him a contract offer, and then Stephen Crowder said, "Hey, that's not going to work for me. Let it go." He was even on their show a few months after he rejected the offer, and then 3 months after that, went on this entire rant calling them in bed with big tech, supporting cancel culture, things like that. And so I'm just going to be straight up with you guys. Um, Me and my wife, we work in corporate. If you've worked in corporate or had like any management type position, you're given an offer letter. An offer letter isn't your contract. An offer letter is saying, for hey, for this position, I'm willing to pay you X amount of dollars for Y amount of work. And once you get the offer letter, you can either say, hey, can we renegotiate this? Can I get X plus L pay for Y plus Z work? And you kind of go back and forth. Sometimes that could take a few hours, few days, even a few months, depending on how big the negotiation is. But the point is, nothing's signed. It's literally just an offer. And so when Steven Crowder got what I'm describing to you all as an offer, he later went and used that offer letter as he means to go on and attack the Daily Wire as being, again, in bed with big tech or promoting cancel culture. So what were you saying, sir? Because you were going to the point of it.
And he and accusing them of being about the money and everything else. And at that point, you're like, so you're not a true conservative or Republican,
Right.
because traditionally they've always been in support of small business. Period. right? That's always been the complaint about the Republican Party, their favoring of war and blood and oil and all those other things we've had to deal with in the past. And that is their support of business, the support of
Right.
business individuals, and that a conservative sits down and actually like enjoys a good contract negotiation
Right.
because it's about money in
Right.
business. And he went straight, well, what they've been saying about the liberals is that he went straight to the whining on the internet.
Yes. Yes.
Um,
I will
and
preface by saying, guys, that Ben Shapiro and Stephen Crowder have known each other for years. And to what Ben Shapiro said, he actually helped Stephen Crowder negotiate his first contract when he blew up over like
Ben
10 to
Shapiro's
15 years
the
ago.
lawyer.
Right, because Ben
He
Shapiro's an
trained.
attorney. And so it's not as if he couldn't talk to these guys because they're actually been colleagues for over a decade. So we're not saying someone that just sent him a blanket letter and then didn't want to hear back from him. We're talking about someone that has actively been on each other's shows and who basically may actually have their personal cell phone numbers because of the videos that Stephen Crowder would later leak. So these aren't just acquaintances or strangers. They're actually supposed to be colleagues. And you know what? To a certain point, I'm pretty sure at one point they thought each other were friends. But go ahead, sir.
Hmm. Yeah, and you know I don't take his response as like a legit complaint as it is just a shock technique to potentially galvanize his own community of people
Hmm.
um, who are not, who may not be true conservatives, who may not be
Right.
truly about business, lower taxes, less government, which is traditional conservatism, which is turned into essentially libertarianism, or at least I believe that's how Clint Eastwood described libertarianism. He said it's what the Republican Party or traditional conservatism always was, and that is less government, less taxes, and things like that. And you know the other part is like the support of business. Now some will say
Right.
big business, but it's like the rules do, if you know any small business owners, you might find that some of them are like they benefit from Republicans being in office more
Right.
so than when Democrats are in office. I'm talking
Right.
about the pizza shop guy.
Yeah.
um,
And the
I have a
candidate.
friend. I have a friend. He went to high school with him. He went to political science. He got deep into politics in Maryland, which is a typically was it blue state, right?
Blue. Yeah.
And
Yep.
we're from a blue city. Right? And he came out. He went in as he came out a Christian conservative Republican, and he said it was ugly.
Yeah.
It was disgusting. The kind of things that are done were not beneficial to people. I've seen, and I've talked to other business owners, auto mechanic, people own their own auto mechanic, like auto places and other small businesses. When we had Obama and certain Democrats in office,
Mhm.
they ended up paying more out of
Right.
pocket for health insurance, and it suffered the business. The business did suffer,
Right.
and I remember talking to a friend of mine who owned his own business, and he said, and I wanted to understand it a little better. I was much younger then, and he
Mhm.
said, here's the real breakdown between conservatism, liberalism, Democrats, Republicans, and this is all it should be. This is all it ever was. This is all it ever is. Don't get distracted by the stuff that doesn't matter.
Okay.
And it's really about how the money is spent and how much money they take from you,
Right.
the taxes and how they spend the money. And that's it. He said, and that's it. He's like, look, if you professionally work for other people, you're probably going to want the guy who promises less taxes for the
Yeah.
guy who works for other people or provides more benefits to them. And that's
Right.
typically supposed to be the liberal or Democrat, right?
Okay.
Social services, welfare, things like that. And then the
Okay.
guy who wants to take the taxes, who wants to charge less taxes to a business owner who employs people, who supports the employer. Well, that's typically the Republican and conservative. That's how he explained it to me. I was like, oh, okay. So government is more about the taxes and how we allocate the funds. Sounds good.
Okay.
Cool.
I can work with that.
When when you when you watch two people who are supposed to be in the same party and they struggle to show up the way they typically are supposed to show up, and that's contracts.
Yeah.
We're talking Republicans. It should be about
Right.
contracts, business, negotiations, millions of dollars. Go for it. Well, that didn't
Oh yeah,
happen.
yeah,
It became a guy screaming in the internet, complaining
right,
about the man. Who
yeah,
complains about the man? The Republicans have never complained about the man. They've always been the man.
the man, right.
The Democrats
And
complain about the man. Big
right,
tech, what?
right, and even to the point, it's like, well, now that it's like, well, hey, now that I'm looking at Steven Crowder like this, it's like, well, you know what? Maybe liberals and libertarians were right when they criticized a grown man going on to college campuses trying to debate people that don't even have a fully developed frontal lobe because they're under the age of 25 and just say, change my mind. Me, the adult, change my mind. And if you try to
You're
change
fresh
my
out of high
mind,
school.
if, right.
You
And so
barely,
the
you don't even have a job.
right. And so I know that there was
It's a bully picking on
right
the
that
kids.
right, and the thing is, even Shearer was like, "But why doesn't he debate adults? Because he's an adult." And the thing is that if you're on a college campus is about to be about having the intellectual debate, but you're not going against someone that's your intellectual, not competitor, but your intellectual
Equal.
equal, right? And so that is technically a bully. And so when you say something incendiary and you say change my mind, and I'm not moving off of your campus because you can't make me, well, then you do sound exactly like a bully. And
Yeah.
so it amplifies what liberals and libertarians were criticizing you for because they were like, well, look, you're only protected by the conservatives around you because they don't see what we see. We know people that are like you, and you're not a conservative. You're almost more like us, but we don't like you, and you can't be in our club. So this is more of you're in the club that's left over.
Mm-hmm.
And
That's
now that good.
good. No, no.
And now that everything's laid bare, it's like, well, dude, I mean, if anything, I could understand if he came and said, you know what, I was completely in the wrong. Like that was a bitch move on my part. I am so sorry. I screwed things up, and I've got a lot of work to do. I'm a fresh father. I'm a father of twins. I'm going through a lot, but that is my bad. No one's saying that people don't accept apologies, especially when you're going to be honest with your apology. You know what I mean? But to try
Mm-hmm.
to double and triple down and then have other people in your fan club go into other people's YouTube and then post comments, I know that you're not in charge of your fan club. However,
Mm-hmm.
if you don't say, "Hey, look, guys, we don't really need to be, breaking things up and be divisive. We're both on the same team. It's just we had a difference of we just had a difference of philosophy when it comes to contractual matters, and I acted out of turn and out of character. That is not me. I'm gonna do better. That's my
Mm-hmm.
fault. Me and the Daily Wire are gonna pass things up. If something comes from it, me being on our channel, that's great. If not, I just want to make sure we have a solid relationship moving forward. That is an
Mm-hmm.
apology that everyone could get behind, liberal, libertarian, conservative, whatever. But
Mm-hmm.
you double and triple down, say I am right, you know, reason will prevail, that kind of guy. It's like, well, now you're being a jerk on top of being a bully, and now it's team Steven Crowder versus team Daily Wire, and that's not the split you need if moving forward in politics you're looking to try to, I don't know, take local government, state government, federal government, and the presidency,
Well,
or
this is the
just to be
problem
willing
with
to or
good.
just to be willing to have a conversation with someone that's saying, "Well, hey, look, um, I'm not sure where I stand politically, and I'd like to have a good faith discussion with you, who happens to be conservative."
Mhm.
It prevents that conversation.
Well, that's the problem with the idea of two parties and the constant repeating of this idea of this two party system. It's a
Duopoly,
multi
yeah,
party system that may have been organized, manipulated, whatever you want to say, into what could be called two parties, but there are multiple parties.
oh yeah,
We only pay attention to two and people are far more nuanced and complicated, if that makes sense, than
yeah,
to be
oh,
two
definitely.
parties. And really, what the two party thing is lumps people together. People, let's use Stephen Crowder because we're going to move from Crowder to Matt Walsh
Agreed.
and
Okay,
the criticisms he was getting from conservatives for his
Right.
really intense statements to the transgender individual.
Dylan Mulvaney.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh, what seems to be sort of like the bonding ground is we're cold, mean, and harsh versus we're ultra sensitive and sympathetic,
Right.
and that becomes this sort of bonding ground. But that doesn't mean intrinsically you have the same ideas about
Right.
how things should be run, right?
Right.
Um, and it doesn't mean you have the same. Yeah, no, it doesn't mean you have the same ideas on how things should be run. You know what I mean? So what
Yeah.
ends up happening is both sides have racists,
Yeah.
but the conservative side gets all the mean, cold guys,
Yeah.
the uh, callous and chin up, almost sociopathic kind of mean guys, right?
Yeah.
When you're appealing to that kind of, and Crowder appeals to, seems to appeal to the college level, college age individual, right?
Right.
And you're appealing to college age conservatives, or are you appealing to college age Caucasian males who just bro out and look down on people?
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
um, because are you really appealing to conservative concepts
Right.
on business? Ben Shapiro was on his YouTube channel, well, on his show, and he was explaining how he was teaching business to his children.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
explaining, because he tells the story of them finding lost golf balls and sort of reselling them and so forth, and then teaching them how to find staff and pay staff and things of that nature. I mean, like,
Hmm.
yeah, Ben Shapiro's a true conservative. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
it doesn't get more conservative than a man who is devoutly religious, family oriented, business minded,
Yeah.
ready to have a real conversation with people,
Agree.
right?
Yeah.
He talks to young people, the college tours and so forth, but
Yeah.
more or less as a lecturer and as an educator, and is willing to have a debate and a reasonable conversation with just about anybody. He spoke to
Right.
the woman from the Young Turks, which is a very liberal
Yeah. My dad was
program.
going. Yeah.
He's sat down and talked, and I've watched his conversations with Bill Maher. He's been on Bill Maher's show. Bill Maher's been on
Hmm.
his show, and he laughs at Bill Maher's jokes.
Yeah.
They get along. I don't agree with Ben Shapiro in this realm, but he saw Black Panther and he loved it. He liked it,
Yeah.
and I was like, the movie,
Kudos to
the
him.
movie is weak. It's so many issues. But anyway, the point is, what makes a person fit that sort of mold? I'm gonna say Ben Shapiro fits that.
Mhm.
I'm gonna say some of the bedfellows, some of the people floating around him, they may connect with a single aspect that can't be found in the other side, and I'm gonna say meanness, because
Yeah.
on the left there's a sort of a, it's not meanness, it's cryness, right?
Okay.
You got one side that feigns sensitivity, the other side has to feign toughness, right?
Okay.
And toughness turns into meanness,
Yeah.
right? And
Right.
sensitivity turns into whining, bleeding heartness, right?
Right. Right.
And if that's the common ground, is how callous you can be, well, that doesn't mean we have the same views on how the world should run, right? And
Right.
the reason why
Right.
I want to we'll bring in Matt Walsh is because, once again, like, here's a guy whose main thing is, so yeah, we get the point. Like, you can't alter biology, but
Right.
what he was being criticized by other conservatives, in terms of his comments on, what's the
Dylan
person's name
Mulvaney.
again?
Dylan
Thank
Mulvaney.
Dylan Mulvaney.
Yeah.
Um, they were criticizing that. It's like, dude, that was mean.
Very mean. Yeah.
Like, we get it.
Right.
We get it. It's a guy, you
Right.
know.
Yeah. The thing
But
is like it's not he's not saying my name is Danielle Mulvaney. It's Dylan. So you obviously know like what it is. So to go on and be that harsh is like, well, that was unnecessary, bro.
and who are you talking to? You
Right.
know. and I believe it's the fellas over at Trigonometry
Yeah.
said, you're only talking to the people who like to listen to you,
Right.
because to be that nasty and mean, you're not convincing anybody of anything. You're not
Right.
creating change. You're not influencing. So you're a person on television or on streaming, whatever you want to call it now. I think it's like internet, whatever you
Yeah.
want to. You're on a screen, right?
Right.
And you're not educating people. You're not
Right.
making people more aware of different situations. You're not convincing people that you're right. I mean, you did an entire documentary on thing
Right.
on information, and it's like you're really just entertaining people who think it's okay to lay into another
Right.
human being, mind you, who
Right.
may just be struggling with a serious, who's just struggling with potentially mental illness
Right.
or a variety of other issues that are
Right.
manifesting themselves in this sort of this entertained delusion,
Right.
you know.
Yeah.
um but he's being nasty about it,
Very.
like you might as well, you like practically called his mother, called out his mother. I
Yeah.
guess we still, but I don't think he did. I believe the rule of no mamas in this game of snaps was
Yeah.
maintained, so he didn't
Yeah.
bring mamas into it.
Good
But
Lord.
he's like ugly. He's calling him ugly, and it's like whoa, whoa, whoa. Now we're in the
Right.
schoolyard.
Right. And that's what I say. The fact is, you're. I would say, on either side. I say, if you're gonna call conservatives the people that were in Germany in the 40s, okay, that's all right. Okay, I heard you say that. And if Matt Walsh saying what he said about Mulvaney being, crazy, unhinged, whatever, it's like, well, hey, do you know what both of those people do when threatened, when cornered, or when emboldened? They end life. So why do
Hmm.
you feel so comfortable ascribing that to that kind of person and then being surprised at the outcome might be the end of someone else's life? It's
Hmm.
like, if you say that and you're ascribing to them, you're actually emboldening them to do the thing that you're accusing them of doing, because well, you just said it. Well, you said I'm this. Well, then I'm going to be the this that you can be.
The worst, the
We
worst. Yeah.
the worst, right? You're not supposed to call a woman a bitch, but the women that have heard it enough will say, well, if that's the way you feel, then I'm going to be the baddest bitch. And that's how
Hmm.
I think that's how we got that term, is because women were tired of men saying it's like, well, I'm going to be that thing, but I'm going to be the best at it. And so, well, you can't be then surprised at the outcome of what you're saying. And so it did, and it also doesn't help that Candace Owens just tried to jump right on his piggyback and say, well, if anything, he wasn't mean enough to Dylan Mulvaney. Now you sound like a mean girl. I
Well,
was like,
she's the most opportunistic mean girl. Like she's super opportunistic.
right.
You know.
I will say this again. Justin and I had this conversation that led me to the realization that Candace Owens and AOC are the same person. And if you look at it as as devoid of emotion as you can, they kind of are the same. I will let you guys come to your own conclusions on that, but watch clips of not only what they say, but how they say it, not talking to, but talking down, and the fact that they think that their audience is actually agreeing with a lot more of what they're presenting than just saying, oh, yeah, young person that's saying what I would say, but I'm not bold enough because I'd get the shit slapped out of me.
Hmm.
So,
And
you
Candace
know,
Owens
I,
pretty much regurgitates the facts and opinions that are put out by legitimate researchers.
right. And
Her
and
her
that's
whole
the
shtick is she is the token.
right.
You know.
And that is the problem sometimes with conservatives. They'll say it's a meritocracy, but they'll only have the black cop or the black woman that has her own show. It's like, well, if you're saying that it's the best person for the job, does that mean that the black person you brought on is technically the best person for the job, or the best minority you could find to make sure you're not being accused of something? Or you're
Right.
saying, or also you're saying the only reason that she's of merit is because she's black and agrees
Yeah.
with what I say. And
Right.
so, and that's what liberals and libertarians have probably been saying about Candace Owens for years. Even Lucas was
Yeah.
saying, hey, look, at one point, she wasn't who she was saying she was being. She tried to have all these things out about her getting fame. So this is something you should watch out for. And I'm not. And
Mm-hmm.
for all intents and purposes, she really could be exactly who she proceeds and pronounces herself to be. The problem is that those type of people only work well with people that feel comfortable saying, well, a black person said it. I'm glad they say it because I was thinking it too. But I'm not interested in having the conversation with someone that is black that has a differing opinion from me,
Mm-hmm.
and I can't inject Candace Owens into it. What if someone says, you know what, Candace Owens isn't the best person. She doesn't have great views. Then what black conservative are you going to try to pull up? And I would say, well, the fact that you're trying to reach for a black conservative is part of your problem to try to win your argument.
And Amala works for PragerU, so she can't go to the Daily
Amalas.
Wire.
Right. Oh yeah.
And I don't know if they
Amala.
want to. And I don't know if they want Gothics.
No, they not about that life. Y'all, Young Ripa, Gothics, and Amalek Pinoji, the Black Triumvirate for actual discussion for politics, race, you name it. Those are the three you're going to want to actually get opinions from because they're going to be nuanced, take everything to account, and say at the end of the day, this is what I'm laying out. Okay.
I
You know,
love,
I'm not.
and in terms of the elders, I enjoy John McWhorter, Thomas Sowell,
Yes.
um,
Yes.
and that's kind of the yeah. That's it. I think those
All
are the
right.
Fab Five.
Ooh, Fab
You
Five.
know,
There we go. New one. Yes,
those are my
it's a
Fab Five.
Fab Five of
Um,
Black Thought. There we go.
I like that Fab Five of Black Thought. Those are my
Writing it
Fab
down,
Five.
y'all. Who's
Everyone else, I'm not too sure about their intentions. They just sound good under the right environment.
right? And so the thing is that you really should be the person that I'm not saying that someone would be afraid to bring on, but someone would be able to bring on fully knowing that you're not going to parrot everything I say, and I can play the conversation of devil's advocate with you because you don't believe what I believe at all. So you're going to push back on certain things that I say, so that when I do have that conversation with someone that's extremely left or right, but still willing to have the conversation, I can kind of have a nuanced conversation, and we don't get into a shouting match or
Hmm.
resort to fisticuffs. And
Yeah,
go ahead.
Gothics put on that debate between black
Oh
conservatives and
yeah,
black liberals, and it was a
yes,
very
very very well
productive
done,
dialogue.
guys.
It wasn't mudslinging or anything
No,
else, but it wasn't. Yeah, unlike the Candace versus Ti of all people dialogue that just went south
devolved.
rapidly,
Right,
just
right,
completely. I mean, this is a guy who started screaming on stage at a comedian making jokes, a black woman
yeah,
comedian making jokes. He's no one you
right.
can have a reasonable
No,
dialogue with,
no,
and you're dealing with Candace Owens, who's a little. Well, listen here, Ti. Kind of got a little bit of that
right,
loud Hillary
right,
Clinton kind of
right.
voice.
Which is why, thank God, if Killer Mike was not there, it would have been a riot. I'll tell y'all right now. Killer Mike was the voice of reason, but Killer Mike can have the conversation because, like, yo, my family's police. I'm from the
Didn't Killer Mike have
country.
that show on Netflix where he tries to
Yeah,
do everything black owned
I think so. I think it might have
on
been.
Netflix?
I,
It
I'm
was
pretty sure
poorly
it was out.
promoted. It was
Then yeah,
poorly
I know what it
promoted,
is.
in my opinion, because when somebody sat me down and said, "Eric, just watch it. Just watch an episode," I was like, "This
Mhm.
is actually pretty smart and informative."
Yeah, he's been on with everybody. I've seen him with he can hang with Candace Owens. I've seen him with Coley on Noir. He's been on the Tonight Show, I believe. So he can talk to everybody. He's someone that you would want to talk to, regardless of what side you are. Because you say, "Well, hey, I know that you're not conservative, you're not liberal, but the people that you do are in contact with, what do they believe about X or Y?" And he can actually have the conversation with you because you're willing to talk about it. Now, kind of close things out and to kind of almost change topics, I would say one of the things that I would say is I know that in Amaj Toure was saying this too about posting, these fight videos or these attack videos where you just wind up seeing what seemingly seem like all these black people attacking either random white folks or defenseless white people, and they're either winding up being dead, seriously hospitalized, the charges wind up being dropped. And I'm saying, well, it's like, look, if you keep posting something that may necessarily be in a minority in general, because poor socioeconomic behavior is going to breed that kind of behavior, regardless of your ethnicity, right? If you
Hmm.
found you're like, oh well, I filled these videos in the hoods, okay, well go to the trailer parks and show me that too. The more and more you
Some
get
of the
these,
videos out of the Philippines and Brazil,
right? The Philippines and
because
Brazil,
I
right?
think I think some of the or Cambodia or Burma. I think
Right.
some of them, like I think there was a video where a man is chopping a woman up with a machete, a
See,
large knife.
right.
I
And
think that's out of the Philippines.
right. And so, and I say that when you keep showing these things like this and only having it be black on white. Look at this poor white woman, this poor white man, this poor white child that just gets accosted by this black person. And I'll see this in the comments. I'll see the meme of it'll be that woman that studied gorillas saying, "Oh, what strange and interesting behaviors." And I was like, "Well, you do know that that's calling black people animals, right? And
Monkeys,
how do you
apes.
monkeys, apes? How do you think number one that actually makes them feel? That's number one. Like, hey, I know y'all learn about the facts don't care about your feelings. However, an incendiary statement is going to evoke an emotional response, right? And so you say things like that to that extent. It's like, well, and you claim to be conservative. It's like, well, that's just you trying to wrap your racism up in the blanket of conservatism.
Hmm.
What that
Well,
also will go ahead.
go no, no,
And I
finish.
what that also is going to do is cause someone to say, you know what? Those black people that I keep seeing hurt these innocent white people are a problem, and I should do something about it. We made a move. They made a movie about this in 1915, and they called it "The Birth of a Nation" or "The Klansman." You really invite that kind of behavior, and the minute they're saying we're doing this because of all the videos we saw and we were shown, it's like, well, did you get all these videos?
Hmm.
Or did you only focus on the ones that were black on white?
Well,
Because we can
and
all go ahead.
yeah, well, I want to before you get too far away from facts don't care about your feelings.
Yeah,
In reference to it, the issue with the facts don't care about the feelings is what facts are the essential facts and which facts are. Um, it's really the argument between causation and correlation,
right.
right?
Yeah,
When we're talking about any of this stuff, causation and correlation, right?
right.
If the fact is, if the fact that's always being presented as this, once again, and I'm gonna go pull from Morgan Freeman saying we should just stop talking about it, and then maybe racism will go away.
Right.
Um, and that is, if we're trying to, if we keep talking towards racism, if we keep talking towards these things and say, well, well, here are the racial statistics, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they'll say, well, that's the facts. That's the facts. Or hear somebody say, well, if you know your history, it's like, how much history are you looking at? The history of one of the youngest countries in the world? Or are you going to look at the history of countries, the oldest country in the world, or the oldest countries in the world, or the land masses that have had people on it, or world history, or you know, when you look over the span of human history,
Mm-hmm.
um, violence is a human thing,
Right.
and it doesn't have a color. It's a bunch of
Exactly.
people with different colors doing a variety of horrendous things to people that we think look like them, look like, people that might look like each other outside looking in. They may think they look different. Who knows? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And
Oh
it's
yeah.
like, and you might say, well, the facts matter. It's like, if the only part of the facts we're paying attention to is that black people are doing more of this than white people, and you say, well, the facts don't care about your feelings, then we're ignoring the fact that human beings, that there are white people, that there are Asian people, that there are people from sub-Saharan Africa, there are people all over the world that do these terrible things,
Things. Right.
which means it's
Right.
not out of the, which means it's within the scope of all human
Human
behavior.
behavior.
So the solution is not going to come from identifying the fact that there is a color difference. In fact, that's a conversation which
Right.
I think sparks a lot of the liberal dialogue. The liberals are like, yeah, that's strange. So shouldn't we consider that a problem? If all human beings have the capacity for violence, then why is one section of human beings producing the majority of the violence?
Right.
If all human beings have the capacity for violence, is there something
Right.
they're not getting or something they are getting that's
Mm-hmm.
causing specifically them?
That behavior. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's where people like Crowder and a lot of the other conservatives kind of fall off, and they're like, well, it's the family infrastructure. So if it's human behavior to have this family infrastructure that seems to be common everywhere else, then the question still remains. And I remember him talking to a young black man, and the young black man's saying, he's like, I agree with you. He's like, I agree with you. But the young black man's trying to get Crowder to recognize
Mhm.
that if there is something that seems to be overtly affecting a specific group of people who have one thing in common,
Mhm.
right?
Right.
American blacks, American and black, not Caribbean black, not African black, American black.
Mhm.
And they're the only people who can't seem to get it right,
Mhm.
right? They can't get it right. They need X, Y, and Z. Then you're really saying, what are they not getting, or what are they getting that makes it impossible for them to participate in something that seems to be so easy
For
for
everybody,
all
yes.
human beings, unless you're implying that they lack the humanity,
Exactly.
which therefore is racist,
Yes. Yeah.
right?
Yes. Yes.
And he
That's
and he danced around it and just wouldn't come. He was like, just admit, just accept it. It's like he just wouldn't. It's like, so what changed for specific? And this is the
right.
fuel of the left, is you can't deny
Right.
that if we are saying all human beings have the same capacity, same until there is no genetic determinism, there is no
Right.
racism, everybody's the same. Cool. Then that means there should not be
Yeah.
any specific issue that seems to be centralized or majority present in a
Group. Yeah.
population of in a group population. If there is such, then there is a question.
That needs to be, yeah, and we need to talk about the what that we need to talk about the question rather than just try to dance around it or go left or go right with it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's either genetic determinism, which we are all saying doesn't exist because we're not racist.
Right.
Then what's the problem then? Then
Right.
why is this? Well, it's family. So you're saying black people do not have families?
Right.
It's education. So black people are being miseducated?
Right.
No, no, well, it's they should. So what you're really saying, it's like you have to admit at that point
Right.
that there is a unique something. Now,
Yeah.
what that something is it the history of slavery? Maybe. But according to a lot of information Thomas Sowell has brought to the forefront, it wasn't slavery, because
No.
black people started to have better families than white folks, have better jobs than white folks. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Sometime after World War II, during the 1960s into the 70s, suddenly things really changed for black folk.
Yeah. And you know what, guys?
And
We have to save that one discussion for another day because that's actually going to be very expansive as well. Because I actually have to have to go.
you busy. You got to get things
Okay,
to
I'm sorry,
do your
man. You guys,
things.
please check out Justin Ice on the on the Facebook for Godfish Training, and even on the Instagram as well. So, guys, that is all we got for today. But for now, thank you for enjoying us on a conversation of conservatives. But for now, E.G.O out.